So I've been given this stylish topic, how to present data like a pro. And I think Raji has got something to do with this. Thank you for this. So I've tried to brainstorm around this topic. And what I discovered, or what I think I want to deliver as a message in this session, in terms of how do you present data like a pro, two keywords came into my mind. The first is data visualization. And the second keyword is data storytelling. Now, simplicity is always the way to go in any form of communication, especially when you're communicating data, right? So the element of creativity, innovation is so important in communicating data and analysis, because ultimately we want to be able to have actionable analytics. That is the focus here today. Yes, you may belong to academics, you may belong to corporate, you may belong, and you generate tables and charts all the time in your respective roles. But I think what we need to think about as well as we do all this, that we do always daily, is that, are you telling a story behind that data that you're presenting? Is it compelling enough for someone to take an action upon? Is it compelling enough for them to believe in that data and that narrative that you're providing with the data? I think that is a big area that we are lacking. So we are information rich, but then in terms of insights, we are not there yet. We are insights poor or knowledge poor for that reason, right? Because we are not able to spend that time to visualize our insights in a way that we can bring value. I think that's what's lacking very much in my work, as well as when I do my own work. I have to think about these things all the time, because me communicating my charts, my tables in my analytical work is not just about completing the task, but bringing out that insight and the discovery which can bring value to my audience, right? So what it means is that with me presenting this tables and charts, what is it that they can get from it, right? What can people do with it? That's the question, right? For people to do something with it, they have to believe in it. They have to believe the narrative behind it, and they have to believe that the narrative is supported with the right data. So it's credible. So story doesn't mean that it's a fiction, right? So when I say data storytelling, do not mistaken me for using the typical word of story here, where it means fiction. So fictionless story is the movies, right? So some movies are made based on some facts, some movies are purely based on imagination. So data storytelling is entirely plotting a story with an outcome, right, that you want to drive your audience towards to. So in a typical story, we have a plot, we have the villain, we have the heroes, we have recommendations, we have options, right? So I'll be talking a little bit about that. Why is that so important? Why do we visualize data, right? Like I mentioned, information rich, but knowledge poor, or we are not insight centric, meaning all that tables we present, 100 tables that we present, what insight has come out of that? That is the question. So we got to relook at our ways of visualizing data, and a concept which is very useful towards that is visual perception principles. Visual perception principles is it's a law of how people look at objects, at things, at colors, at shapes, right? And this is very important. Even if we are analysts, we need to be designers as well. We've got to look at design thinking. We've got to think, how is it that we can communicate that piece of information in a way that is so insightful that people feel impacted, or people feel moved to a certain action. So visual perception principles is not just limited to designing work, but also in analytics, and it's become very prominent today in terms of visualizing data. And I will be showing you a lot of examples about how the storytelling can change, right? How is it that when you do normal charts, how it looks, and then when you transform it into a story, how does this chart how will the charts look like? So I'll give you very simple um, rules that you can try out immediately on your own charts and your own tables that can produce excitement for you. So I'll show you some examples there. What is data storytelling? Right. So data storytelling is basically building a narrative around your data and ensuring that you have the right visualizations. Visualizations here means charts. Those charts that you build, the bar charts, the pie charts, the stack bar charts, the waterfall charts, right? And to convey the meaning of that data in a powerful and compelling fashion. That is the definition of data storytelling. So I want to talk a little bit about in terms of visual perception, right? How do people look at things? There is this principle called Gestalt visual perception principles. And this principle is highly used in design thinking, especially in terms of customer experience, user experience, when we design apps, when we design websites, or when we design certain stores, for example, online stores, physical stores. We got to think about these kind of principles because this is generally how people think about things. Now, in this Gestalt principle, there is this 6 element, which are the key elements of how people usually look at things. First is called a group figure. All right. So in this group figure, objects grouped together tend to be perceived as a single figure. Right. So people understand this. Okay, that's a group of objects. Right. And that's what we call a good figure. And there is similarity as well. Similarity is another component where if they are the same things, you group them together. That's what's the expectation of the mind. It's a mind thing, right? So when the objects are similar, you tend to group them together. If they're not similar, you tend to separate them, isn't it? That's how we think about it. Then we have the element of closure, right? So closure is, if you see this object, you can see that in the middle of it, there's a box, right? But the outer elements are connected. So that gives closure to the mind. If you leave it halfway, people tend to think, hey, why is this thing incomplete? Assuming that I don't close the box, I just leave it half, right? I leave it hanging. So for when people look at it, people perceive it as, oh, that's hanging, right? It's not closed. And most of the time, we want it closed because that's when we consider that a good design, right? Now, proximity is another element. Objects which are close together should be grouped together. That is the expectation of the mind, right? Continuation is another element. When there is an intersection between two or more objects, people tend to perceive each object as an uninterrupted object, a single uninterrupted object. Meaning that when there is cross lines or when there is circles, right? You can't leave the circle halfway because then it means incomplete to whoever's looking at it. Hey, why is this work not done? Right? So that gives them the perception that this is not complete. And the mind also looks out for symmetrical objects. We need symmetry. We always look for symmetry, right? So symmetry is one half and the other half should be matching, right? So if you see a lot of these activities online, you can see that they have activities where you're supposed to find missing objects, or activities where, you know, some part of it is, you know, especially in puzzles, how do you connect those pieces together? All these activities are using the Gestalt principles, which trains our mind to actually look for these elements here: similarity, symmetry, closure, proximity. And those are the patterns where people are very much used to, and how the mind also thinks. So when you bring it to our analytics, right? When we visualize data, we have to keep that in mind, that people look at things like this. They expect these things, right? So that when you make a presentation filled with charts and tables, those presentations make sense to the audience as well. And they will not think that it is not complete, especially in terms of colors and shapes, right? So it's very good to practice incorporating these elements into your presentation, and it will only get better and more interesting for you to present as well, apart from your audience, right? Because you're always looking at, you can present the same chart in many ways, and the ideas will look differently as well, right? So it's not just about generating a chart, but it's about generating a chart which is actually creative and interesting and actionable. Here's an example of a data story makeover. Means that this was before the data storytelling. This is how the chart looked like. And all of us have produced this kind of charts before, right? And continue to do so as well. We've got this product A, product B, product C, product D, and E, and how these products have, in terms of price, been year on year from 2008 to 2014. So you can see that product A and product B are sort of legacy products of the organization, of the company, while products C, D, and E are slightly newer, because you see they have less years in them, right? So you can see that very clearly, especially product E is the latest to join in the suite of products. So the title is Average Retail Product Price Per Year. Okay, that's it. It stops there. That is typically how we see all the charts today, right? We just draw a component bar chart, and the price is there, and the years are there, and then you leave it at that, right? So most of us draw charts like this, isn't it? Now, what I like to tell today is that do a storytelling. Reorganize your chart, recreate your chart with the same data set in a way that you can tell or make an impact. For example, the same data set that was used with this bar chart has been converted into a line chart here with a different title and a different color scheme, right? So the title says now, to be competitive, we recommend introducing our product below the $223 average price point in the $150 to $200 range. So you can see that product A, product B lines over the years 2008 to 2014 have been mapped, and product C launched in 2010, and that pricing mapped till 2014. And product D launched in 2011, and product E launched in 2013. And these are the price points over the years. And you can see that all these price points are converging to a certain average here, right? This is the average it's converging to. And this average appears to be slightly above the newer product price range and lower than the older product price range, correct? So what they are saying is that to cater to all the products in the suite, which is product A, B, C, D, and E, they are saying that make the price point in a recommended range of 150 to 200, because that enables even the newer product to be priced more competitively in the market. The difference, right? You do see the difference, the transformation using the same data set, right? That's exactly what we are saying, that the change in visualization brings you to a different realm altogether, where it can enable you to make an impact. The second chart, similarly, if you would like to make a recommendation, this is the chart before the storytelling. We have support tickets, support ticket, technical support. How many tickets come in and how many tickets are processed out of what you receive. So between the month of January to December for the entire year, they have provided the bar chart. So there is ticket received, processed for January, February. Okay, this is the normal chart, and there is the ticket trend, right? But when you do a data storytelling, the same chart has been turned into a line chart here instead of a bar chart, a component bar chart, where the title has changed, the fonts have changed, a little bit more texty, right? And not bar, into line. And there's a little bit of legend there as well in terms of the source of data, right? Where this chart shows very clearly, okay, between the month of January to May, all tickets received were processed. Very clearly can be seen here, but I couldn't see that here, right? But after May, you can see the gap between the received and the processed tickets, right? Where they receive high volumes of tickets, support tickets that need to be closed, but they are unable to process it. So the gap has formed here. So that will be the question in the mind. Oh, why the gap, right? Any audience looking at this chart will ask the question, oh, why is that gap, right? It's a very logical question to ask on this chart, right? What happened? So that's when you bring in the data point. You bring in the comment to say that, okay, 2 employees have quit in May. So they try to do the backlog, but they have not been able to catch up, because even if they get the current workforce, the support team to catch up, but they're not able to catch up, and there's still that gap. And this gap is expected to continue until and unless we have the 2 full-time employees coming in to replace this headcount. So that brings an immediate recommendation as a title to say that, oh, please approve the hire of 2 full-time employees to backfill those who quit last year. And the management will see definitely the urgency of this, isn't it? Because they can see the numbers outright to show, the numbers clearly shows that there is a gap. And until and unless the 2 employee headcounts are filled, this gap will continue. So you can't blame the manager for this. You got to hire, right? So this is exactly how compelling your messaging can be when you present, right? With the right elements of data source, it's credible because it's based on the data between January to December 2014, and where was this data sourced from is given. So there's no doubt about the credibility of the data. And the gap is very clear, right? Which causes concern for anyone looking at this, especially if it's management. They will get worried, isn't it? Looking at this, right? And they can't blame the manager for this because they are trying their best to fill that gap, but they're not able to. And this has been continuing for 6 months now. So they will definitely take your recommendation, correct? So this is the kind of transformation you can have when you consider just slight changes in terms of the type of chart and putting in credible information like the source and what happened. So create that worry, that panic in them, and provide a recommendation, right? So it's an entire story in one chart like that in the slide. So the next type of storytelling makeover that you can consider, how can you make over? What are the exact steps to make over? is using words, the copywriting on your slide. Copywriting used to be a word associated with designers, graphic designers, user experience designers, customer experience managers, right? But today in the analytical field, we use it as well. Like I mentioned, you got to design your charts and your tables in a way that it comes to life, right? And using words and colors helps tremendously towards that direction. You can see that very clearly here. So you can see that the home prices for 2021 has increased tremendously compared to 2020 and 2019. You can see that very clearly. So the two gray lines here is 2019 and 2020 home prices. And the purple color, a lot more bold compared to the gray lines here, because you want the audience to focus on the purple line. So you emphasize with a different color, the purple line. And that clearly shows the story, right? To say that 2021 prices have really increased, right? So the point is established. So just a change of color, highlighting or bolding one particular line that you want your audience to focus on, and using the different fonts here, like they have bolded, increased year on year, and they've also colored 2021 similar to the color of the line, right? You can see the color of the line and the color of the year in the wording is same, it's both purple, right? So this emphasis is very clear here that we want to say 2021 price increased compared to the previous year. Just using the words and the colors. Apart from changing the way you draw the chart, which is in the previous ones I showed you, where you transform from a bar chart to a line chart, you can also consider changing words and the colors to focus on what you want the audience to focus on. Right? So that's an example. Now, I'd like to stop here.